Okay, good morning, everybody. Please take your seats. Please, will everybody take their seats? I call the meeting of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security to order. Unfortunately, our chairman, Dr. Wellman, is unable to be with us here in Monaco, and so I, as your vice chairman, will chair our meetings. So before we begin, can I ask anyone speaking from a prepared text to hand a text to the Secretariat in advance? What is? Just proceed. In advance, helping the interpreters in this way will make our meetings more productive and efficient. So, colleagues, the agenda for this meeting has been distributed. Could I please invite you to adopt the agenda? Are there any objections? None objections. The agenda is adopted. Thank you.
Is there a microphone on somewhere in the system?
Okay, we just go on. So, it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to this meeting. I will also like to introduce and thank the other members of the committee's bureau. The rapporteur, Mrs. Vilja Aleknaite Abramikiene from Lithuania. The committee is staffed by Deputy Secretary General Tina Schön and a clerk from the United Kingdom House of Commons, Richard Cook. And may I remind colleagues that the election of the committee officers for the 22nd annual session of the Assembly will take place during the committee's final session on the morning of Sunday, 8th of July. Nominations for candidates for election should be handed in to the table office no later than the start of that session, 11:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. The committee is scheduled to have 4 meetings during the session, and our agenda is very full. First, we have follow-up on the recommendations in the OSCE PA's Belgrade Declaration, which I will present. We also have the report and draft resolution prepared by our rapporteur, Mrs. Abramikiene, on the theme of this year's annual session, the OSCE regional change. 25 amendments have been tabled to the draft resolution. In addition, this committee has been tasked by the Standing Committee to debate and consider 12 supplementary items covering the following issues. Draft resolution on Helsinki plus 40 proposed by Mrs. Christine Egerszegi-Obrist of Switzerland. Draft resolution on the impact of small states in the OSCE proposed by Mrs. Marion Kindle-Kuhnis of Liechtenstein. Draft resolution on Moldova proposed by Mrs. Valborga Habsburg Douglas of Sweden. Draft resolution on the OSCE and emerging democracies in the Arab world proposed by Mrs. Jean-Charles Gardet of Monaco. Draft resolution on Iran's nuclear program proposed by Mr. Akhtar Chaudhry of Norway. Draft resolution on enlarging the partnership with non-member Mediterranean states to include the Palestinian National Authority proposed by Mr. Robert Marshall of Iceland. Draft resolution on strengthening security in the OSCE region proposed by Mr. Ole Bilrus of Ukraine. Draft resolution on the situation in Georgia proposed by Mr. Michael Szrebsa of Poland. Draft resolution on enhancing cross-border cooperation policies in the post-conflict scenarios proposed by Mr. Jose I. Sanchez Amor of Spain. Draft resolution on support of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy proposed by Mr. Claude Heche of Switzerland. Draft resolution on countering violent extremism and radicalization that lead to terrorism proposed by Mrs. Glanzmann-Hunkeler of Switzerland. Draft resolution on the development of OSCE cooperation with Afghanistan by 2014 and beyond proposed by Mr. Francois Javier de Donna of Belgium. And 25 amendments have been proposed to these supplementary items. I think these supplementary items complement well the work of the rapporteur. These supplementary items will be considered after we have finished our work on follow-up and draft resolution. So I will now present my follow-up on last year's declaration. So, dear colleagues, it's a great, is this on? Yeah, nice. It's kind of different sound here than at other place. It's a great pleasure to address you on the actions taken over the past year by the OSCE institutions in relation to the recommendations adopted at last year's annual session in Belgrade. My presentation is based on the final report on follow-up, which has been made available to you prior to this meeting. As you will recall, the general theme of last year's annual session was strengthening the OSCE's effectiveness and efficiency, a new start after the Astana summit. In addition to dealing with political and military aspects of the general theme, our committee also passed resolutions on issues such as Moldova, Mediterranean political transition, and the Corfu process. Please note that the report also considers some key issues from past OSCE PA declarations. The report gives a detailed overview of follow-up actions in 7 areas. I will highlight 3 areas in my presentation: activities beyond the OSCE area, protracted conflicts, and re-establishing an OSCE presence in Belarus. If I should give a frank overall assessment of the progress made in the political and military area, I hesitate to use too many big positive words. The reason is that the OSCE has been unable to make substantial contribution in several regards. No real progress was made on issues such as arms control, reopening OSCE mission in Belarus and Georgia, finding solutions to the unresolved conflict on Nagorno-Karabakh, South Ossetia and Abkhazia, as well as promoting democracy and respect for human rights in Belarus. A lot of efforts have been made, both by the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the executive structures of the OSCE, and by a range of other players. But the problems are still unresolved, and the human suffering associated with the use of violence, injustice, and disrespect of human rights continues. This obviously goes against the core values of our organization. If we allow such situations to go on year after year, the OSCE will lose support and legitimacy. And then, to continue on a more positive note, I am pleased to report that we have seen several positive initiatives in the area of activities beyond the OSCE area, particularly in relation to North Africa. I was very happy to see all 5 Mediterranean partners represented during the Mediterranean Forum in Dubrovnik in October. And I was particularly happy that support was expressed for the role of women in North African politics. In my view, increasing the influence of women will be crucial for the success of democratic reforms in the region. In some countries, there are positive developments in this area, but there is still a long way to go. The OSCE PA's extensive participation in the observation mission to Tunisia in October was another concrete follow-up to the Belgrade Declaration. I think the OSCE and the OSCE PA should be ready to send observers to other countries beyond the OSCE participating states if the countries so request. When it comes to protracted conflicts, the report addresses the still unresolved problems in Georgia, Moldova, and also with respect to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Several efforts were made over the past year, both by the OSCE PA and the OSCE executive structures. But as mentioned earlier, the progress made with respect to the first 2 situations has been very limited. In addition, there has been no progress towards re-establishing an OSCE office in Minsk and OSCE mission to Georgia. In general, the government of Belarus continues to ignore the international calls for democratization and respect for human rights. The difficult situation in this country has also been discussed in the Norwegian Parliament on many occasions since last year. MPs have submitted questions to ministers on issues such as the situation for political prisoners, media freedom, and to what extent human rights issues are addressed in the free trade negotiations between the European Free Trade Association and Belarus. The message made by our parliamentarians was clear. We have to keep up the pressure for democratic reforms in Belarus. A key element is, of course, the upcoming parliamentary elections next September. We all expect progress so that they can be held democratically in accordance with Belarus's OSCE commitments. In Moldova, on the other hand, there has been real and positive progress. We are pleased with the contribution of the OSCE PA's parliamentary team on Moldova, headed by Mrs. Walburga Habsburg Douglas. The Lithuanian and Irish OSCE chairmanship have also been working hard to bring the recognition process between Chisinau and Tiraspol forward. During the last year, the so-called 5+2 negotiations have been resumed. And just a few weeks ago, the Moldovan Prime Minister and the Transnistrian leader, Yevgeny Shevchuk, met in Germany to discuss confidence-building measures. These initiatives really look promising, and to me, this is a good example of how the OSCE PA and the executive structures of the OSCE pull in the same direction to achieve good results. Before I conclude, I also will make a few comments on an issue that is slightly outside the scope of this committee, namely women's representation in the OSCE PA. I think this is such an important issue and should be mentioned in all committees. We in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly claim to be representative of the electorates in our countries. In fact, a fundamental feature of our whole existence is that we, the parliamentarians, lend legitimacy to the OSCE and all its activities. However, the claim that we are representative does not correspond to reality. Women are still massively underrepresented in most national delegations, which in my view undermines the Assembly's legitimacy. Many of the resolutions adopted by the Assembly relate to really complex international situations in which we have relatively limited influence on the outcome. But the fact that we seem incapable on influencing on our own internal composition is much more difficult to understand. If we are unable to implement our own internal resolutions on women's representation in our delegations, how can we demand to be heard in complex issues in the outside world? We really have to do a lot better. And to return to the follow-up report, I encourage you to read it carefully, as it gives a good overview of the actions taken since last summer, including much more than I have mentioned here. I am grateful to the International Secretariat, which has done an excellent job in assisting me in preparing the report. Thank you very much. So we change hats and go back to leading this meeting. I would now like to give the floor to the rapporteur of this committee, Mrs. Abramekiene, who has worked very hard to present a good report and draft resolution as basis for our work. Mrs. Abramekiene, you have the floor.
Thank you, Susan. I must say that hard work of our secretariat has helped me a lot for the beginning. Dear and honorable colleagues, since its establishment, CSE-OSCE has always been a catalyst for change, local, regional, and global. The Parliamentary Assembly itself was founded at the remarkable time when Eastern and Central Europe, with the support of the international community, decisively refused the occupation, dependency, and totalitarianism. Nonetheless, new security challenges keep emerging. The Parliamentary Assembly has to continue its positive contribution to change through leadership, promotion of democratic principles and human rights, setting high standards of political pluralism. In particular, at a time when a number of participating states seem to have retreated from the principle of comprehensive security. I happened to go through the epoch of singing revolutions of the Baltics. The cold waters of the Baltic are no match to the Mediterranean Sea. Do we recognize that Mediterranean music, the drums of the Arab Spring echoing from that other coast? The music is hopeful and free-spirited, yet giving out dissonant accords and edgy notes. These days, we will give a hearing to problems of our Mediterranean partners and our common future. Moreover, our colleague, Mr. Gardetto, our host, has tabled the draft resolution dedicated solely to those issues. Personally, I would like to praise the Secretary General of OSCE. While fulfilling the decision of Vilnius Ministerial Council early this year, Ambassador Zanier engaged the Mediterranean partner states to flesh out ideas for cooperation. They set to define the spheres of possible cooperation in all three dimensions of OSCE activities. Consequently, a wide list of potential projects reflecting the OSCE's specific expertise came into being. Let's hope no time is wasted to successfully utilize this menu. The Parliamentary Assembly, through its outreach and political contacts, has to encourage the governments of the Mediterranean partners to engage the OSCE in earnest. Execution of concrete projects would generate mutual benefit, seeking for progress in the Arab world and creating a common security community. Expecting changes for the better is part of human nature. However, at times, we have to summon the courage and face the challenges in order to retain our dignity. The OSCE should stay alert in order to preserve its identity. The recent developments in our neighborhood have clearly demonstrated the close and indivisible interrelation between our regional security and that of the neighboring regions. We all feel ashamed about the ongoing bloodbath in Syria. How long will the world sit on its hands? What can suffering Syrians hope for today, in our day and age? Probably they hope for responsibility of states to protect innocent civilians, for so-called R2P. They look for ships of food and medicine rather than weaponry. Let's hope there will be a day that all nations will do something above their national interests to end this bloodshed and to counter the threat of a civil war or regional calamity. The Afghan challenge remains a prominent feature on our agenda. Effective functioning of the Afghan institutions beyond 2014 is a key. My own country, Lithuania, in its capacity as chair of the contact group with the Asian Partners for Cooperation, has done a lot to streamline the OSCE activities. The Vilnius Ministerial Council decision on strengthening OSCE engagement with Afghanistan was supported by a new package of 32 projects, ranging from capacity building in border management and security to water management and electoral support. Now is the time to put the money where the mouth is. I call my fellow parliamentarians to give serious consideration and political support to funding those projects. Equally, the role of Central Asian OSCE participating states for the implementation of the projects needs to be underscored. The OSCE can and should play an important role in facilitating cooperation between Afghanistan and the neighboring regions. Coming back to the subject of our session, region of change, I'm particularly pleased to note encouraging developments in the settlement of Transnistrian conflict. Renewed under the Lithuanian chairmanship, the formal 5+2 talks have productively continued under the Irish chairmanship. The negotiations have led to the agreement on principles and procedures, with much hope for future agreements as well. During our session, we will discuss the Transnistrian conflict in greater detail when considering the supplementary item submitted by Ms. Walburga-Habsburg. We should also take this opportunity to express our best wishes to the upcoming chairmanship of Ukraine. The next OSCE chairmanship, which is due in 6 months, has vowed to make further progress on the Transnistrian settlement. Changes for better would allow considering the extent to which the bottom-up approach used in the 5+2 format can be useful in resolving other protracted conflicts. To some extent, it might be applicable to a dialogue between Tbilisi, Sukhumi, and Tshinvali. A solution to the return of refugees and IDPs from the 2008 war cannot be put off indefinitely. So does the restoration of an OSCE presence based on a status-neutral agreement. On the other hand, the development of neighborly dialogue in Georgia doesn't cancel the agreements and commitments of the 6-point plan of 12 August and 8 September 2008 regarding Georgia's occupied territories. They are drawn up in black and white in French and Russian. According to Bulgakov, manuscripts don't burn. What about our international agreements? A great deal of manuscripts was written on the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. The co-chairs of the Minsk group on the highest levels called for a settlement to the conflict in accordance to the United Nations Charter, the principles of the Helsinki Final Act, and the elements outlined in the joint statements of their presidents at L'Aquila in 2009 and Muskoka in 2010. On 7th December last year in Vilnius, the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan and the co-chairs issued this joint statement which reaffirmed the importance of reaching a peaceful settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. In spite of many high-level negotiations, few messages of peace come from the region. An increasing number of military incidents along the line of contact is not acceptable. This year, heavy sniping, exchange of mortar and artillery fire, and military and civilian casualties on both sides betray a worrying return to early 90s. Sparks of conflict are too dangerous and unpredictable. We must call on both sides to work on the mechanism to investigate ceasefire violations, start rebuilding confidence, and finalize the basic principles for the peaceful settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Equally, I gladly note that the OSCE has finally become a stronger and streamlined to respond to emerging risks across the entire conflict cycle as a result of the Corfu and Vilnius to Vienna dialogues. But we have to continue to give the OSCE the political support and financial resources in order for it to be a first and effective responder in the region of change. Dear colleagues, we shall ask ourselves rhetorically whether there is more confidence between the states in the OSCE area in recent years. I'm afraid that the answer may be negative. One key reason is the lack of transparency and confidence between states in exchanging information on armaments. We face the situation when arms control instruments created with the demise of the Cold War do not work. A slight progress with the Vienna document has not provided us with answers to essential issues, like lowering of thresholds for information exchange on military exercises, strengthening risk reduction mechanisms, or enlarging the scope of CBMs. I hope you will cast your support behind the resolution urging the participating states to update substantially the Vienna document by the Dublin Ministerial Council meeting. Freeze in the CFE treaty negotiations remains another challenge. Unfortunately, the suspension of implementation of CFE treaty provisions in 2007 had resulted in a serious decrease in military transparency and stability in Europe. I agree with those who say that CFE treaty cannot solve all existing problems, but it is an important instrument for ensuring stability, predictability, and transparency. It is a very important element of European security architecture. The process of the modernization of CFE treaty has come unstuck over disagreement on host nation consent and transparency measures. But issues are fundamental. We cannot imagine any reliable future conventional arms control agreement in Europe which does not address host nation consent issue or provide for clear and full picture of conventional force postures. As a Lithuanian citizen living close to the Kaliningrad enclave, I feel it profoundly. Dear colleagues, our nations and states live in austerity times. Moreover, disagreements in our region continue to set us apart when we are expected to work together for the benefit of all our nations. We parliamentarians almost every day have to make difficult but essential decisions. I believe we can take upon ourselves greater responsibility in our parliaments to seek that OSCE region becomes the space of true and positive changes. May I also thank our honorable hosts, colleagues of the Principality of Monaco, for their hospitality. Coming from the cool climate, I take with pleasure the heavy heat that you colleagues have warned us of. The mesmerizing landscape of Monaco is unforgettable, and I will take it back with me home. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going on to the debate. We have a general debate, and it would assist me greatly if any member wishing to speak during the debate could enter his or her name in the register as early in the debate as possible. And I would like to suggest that we limit our contributions during the debate today to 3 minutes. Thank you for your agreement. The floor is now open for debate. Please remember that the contributions should be no longer than 3 minutes, and we do have a clock here, so we will tell you when 3 minutes has passed. And we also have a speakers list, and the first on our list is Mr. Giorgio from Cyprus. Mr. Giorgio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Chair. I first wish to express our appreciation to our Monagas host for their kind invitation and warm hospitality. Allow me to highlight a few points I deem important for our debate. At these difficult times the world is experiencing, it is crucial that the international community places greater focus on its credibility and relevance, which are often questioned by facts. We therefore deem essential that the acknowledgement of persisting violations of international law in the OSCE area, as well as the need for participating states' commitment to these focused aims, be unfairly pointed out by this assembly. This commitment should underlie efforts towards the necessary political consensus in order to overcome existing mistrust and diverse security perceptions as called for by the Astana Declaration. In fact, the true challenge resides in building on international law while upholding its fundamental principles. Divergent of OSCE fundamental principles, namely the indivisibility of security, respect of states' sovereignty, and non-interference in the internal affairs of states, explain the state of play in the OSCE area and the world. Therefore, putting aside national agendas should prevail in all cases and not selectively in the search for global security. Regrettably, this appears to be even less realistic in the new security environment. Hence, the absence of a unified response by the international community based on international law and pertinent UN resolutions to crisis situations, including in the Eastern Mediterranean region. The case of Cyprus is highly relevant. Cyprus has taken over the presidency of the Council of the European Union in critical economic and political circumstances for the Union and the country in particular. I wish to stress at this point Cyprus' determination to serve at its best the aims and goals of the European Union by carrying out an objective and successful presidency despite objective difficulties. We reiterate our appeal to Turkey to respect the presidency of the EU, an institution provided for by the EU Treaty. I would also wish to reaffirm Cyprus' position that its eventual exploitation of its energy resources should be a catalyst towards peace and stability, which will benefit both Greek and Turkish Cypriots, the wider region, and the European energy security. Enhanced monitoring by the OSCE of participating states, compliance with, and the implementation of their commitments will significantly contribute to these organizations' greater transparency and accountability, and thereby to its greater legitimacy and influence. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Mrs. Daneva from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. The floor is yours.
Madam Chairperson, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. At the beginning, I would like to congratulate Ms. Vilja Aleknate to her excellent report and the proposed draft resolution, as well as to thank our host, the delegation of Monaco, for their particular warm welcome and the exceptional organization of this annual session. Dear colleagues, it is clear that the changing nature of contemporary conflicts and the emergence of new security challenges as compared to conventional warfare have added new concerns to the global agenda and perhaps also changed the order of our priorities. Today, all the countries in the world, whether they are large or small, rich or poor, are faced with the same challenges: fight against terrorism and organized crime, trafficking in human beings, arms and narcotics, attacks on the computer system, global financial crisis, climate change, energy supply, etc. There are also the so-called problems without passports, such as poverty, growing inequality and unemployment, population movements, natural disasters, ecosystem breakdown, new disease. A military approach of these challenges is inadequate and probably counterproductive. The OSCE, as an organization whose activities are cross-dimensional, must be capable of considering these issues. The OSCE has increasingly been performing as politically relevant, functionally creative, and operationally oriented security organization. We can all agree that the Astana summit was an important landmark for the OSCE to test its credibility and relevance in the new post-Cold War realities, including vis-à-vis other security organizations which operate in the same area and whose roles have changed over the last decade. The summit demonstrated that far fewer issues divide OSCE participating states than unite them. The Astana Declaration contains an reaffirmation of all OSCE norms, principles and commitments, and of participating states' accountability to their citizens and responsibility to each other for their full implementation, as well as a particularly strong affirmation of OSCE human dimension commitments. This would involve strengthening the legal framework of the organization and its capacities in conflict prevention, crisis management, and post-conflict rehabilitation, and deepening OSCE interaction within partners for cooperation as well as other international organizations. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is our task as parliamentarians, and especially as members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, to urge our governments to fulfill their commitments and to ensure that necessary political will for implementation of the objectives of these organizations will be done. Let me remind you that right from the start, the Helsinki Final Act recognized the interconnected relationship between the human, political, military, economic, and environmental dimension, which are all essential for securing peace, stability, and friendly relations between and within states. The Republic of Macedonia supports the commitments for strengthening the OSCE, which refers to the improvement of the consultative process, strengthening the transparency, efficiency, and the effectiveness of the organization, increasing the role of the Secretary General of OSCE, strengthening the OSCE institution and missions, reviewing the options for legal status of OSCE, etc. And to conclude, I would like to emphasize that it's of utmost importance for my country, the Republic of Macedonia, to implement the OSCE and other recommendations in connection with the electoral legislation, especially now when we are in the process of amending of the electoral code.
Sorry, you have to conclude now.
Yeah, I'm concluding. It is our highest priority to organize the upcoming local elections due to take place in 2013 in full compliance with the OSCE recommendations and standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have been kind of nice to the first two speakers, but we will not be so nice hereafter. So please note that you have 3 minutes, or 3 minutes only. So we go back to the speakers list, and now we have Mr. De Donia from Belgium.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Félicitations au rapporteur pour son rapport et sa proposition de résolution qui couvre, je crois, l'essentiel des problèmes qui nous préoccupent aujourd'hui au sein de l'OSCE. Je voudrais aborder brièvement 4 points. Tout d'abord, en ce qui concerne le traité CFE qui est en panne depuis 2007, je pense qu'il est essentiel que les discussions sur la réforme et l'avenir du traité puissent redémarrer dès début 2013, après les élections présidentielles américaines. En ce qui concerne le document de Vienne de 1999 sur les mesures de confiance, qui autorise notamment les inspections d'armement, ce document a été actualisé. La Russie s'est montrée réticente à accepter les inspections d'armement parce qu'elle devait encore se conformer sur le plan administratif à la nouvelle version du document, mais il semble que les discussions au sein de la Douma soient à présent clôturées et il est donc très important que les inspections en matière d'armement puissent reprendre rapidement. Enfin, 3e point, il y a l'application du traité ciel ouvert qui pose également des problèmes. tant entre la Russie et la Géorgie qu'en ce qui concerne la demande d'adhésion de Chypre au traité ciel ouvert. Là aussi, je crois que notre Assemblée doit exprimer son souhait très ferme de voir le traité ciel ouvert appliqué par tous les États membres de l'OSCE. Enfin, et je termine par là, je me réjouis vivement de ce que le secrétaire général de l'OSCE ait créé un groupe de travail en matière de cybersécurité. En effet, les menaces en la matière ne font qu'augmenter avec la sophistication technique de plus en plus grande des pirates informatiques et cela menace non seulement la sécurité de nos États, la sécurité de tous ceux qui font appel à l'informatique pour fonctionner, mais aussi cela pose de graves questions en ce qui concerne le respect de la vie privée. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Guliev from Azerbaijan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to cordially thank Ms. Vilja Alkenytė-Abramikienė, a reporter from Lithuania, for preparing such a comprehensive document, the OSCE Region of Change. She has made a tremendous effort to cover many aspects of today's reality in OSCE area, in particular the unresolved or protracted conflicts which still exist in the OSCE region and remain one of the greatest threats to security and stability. Ms. Rapporteur is fully right that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict continues to cost lives along the line of contact, and tensions in this region are still extremely high. She suggests as an important first step is to ensure that the ceasefire agreement is being respected and that snipers are withdrawn. And also she asks for full investigations are conducted when conflict-related incidents occur. I would like to underline that the Azerbaijan consents to establishment of mechanisms for investigation of incidents on the line of contact between the troops, but logically this mechanism can work only after the withdrawal of Armenian troops from our lands. If it takes place, I am sure that there will be no need for the snipers. On the other hand, it makes sense to clarify for our reporter and for our parliamentarians what Armenian snipers do in contact line which passes through Azerbaijani territory. Therefore, dear ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the OSCE should make it clear to Armenia that it does not accept the status quo nor legitimize the occupation. It should emphasize that Azerbaijani territories remained occupied and that international conventions were being flouted. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that Azerbaijan wishes to resolve Nagorno-Karabakh conflict by peaceful means within the framework of international norms and standards and expect the same attitude from the opposite side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to Mr. Gegamyan from Armenia. The floor is yours.
Я хочу выразить в первую очередь благодарность госпоже Вилье Александровне за очень взвешенный доклад. Что касается части доклада по Нагорно-Карабахскому конфликту, увы, полностью разделяю вашу озабоченность тем, что военные диверсии и снайперский обстрел территории Нагорно-Карабахской республики со стороны Азербайджана продолжается. Более того, они сейчас обстреливают и диверсионные вылазки устраивают в отношении Республики Армения. Это во многом связано с той воинственной риторикой, которая звучит с уст высшего азербайджанского руководства. В частности, совершенно недавно, в апреле 2012 года, на заседании Евронест президент Азербайджана Ильхам Алиев назвал армян фашистами. До этого Выступая опять-таки перед очень авторитетной аудиторией, президент Азербайджана назвал основным врагом азербайджанского народа всемирное армянство. Естественно, после подобных воинственных изречений надо было ожидать и военных диверсий, и снайперского обстрела. А это все, на наш взгляд, является следствием двойных стандартов, которые применяют, увы, международные организации при оценке конфликта. В частности, почему-то из документа в документ упоминается лишь один из трех основных принципов урегулирования Нагорно-Карабахского конфликта, а два столь важных принципа, которые говорят о принципе неприменения силы и угрозе применения силы, а также право народов на самоопределение, почему-то игнорируются азербайджанской стороной и, увы, не находят свое отражение в документах соответствующих международных организаций. Вот почему армянская делегация в проект резолюции по докладу госпожи Абрамикене внесла поправку, учитывающую также и два других принципа, которые были изложены президентами России, США и Франции в Аквильском документе, в Мускоке, в Довиле и недавно в Лос-Кабосе. А именно надо обязательно включать в эти документы принцип неприменения силы и угрозы силой, а также право народов на самоопределение. Армянская сторона изначально и устами своего президента, национального героя Арцаха Сержа Азатовича Саркисяна, говорила о абсолютной приверженности армян и Армении и народа Нагорного Карабаха к мирному урегулированию Нагорно-Карабахского конфликта в соответствии с тремя принципами, изложенными в совместных заявлениях президентов стран Минской группы ОБСЕ. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. And the next on our list is Mr. Silva from Portugal.
Merci, Madame. Je voudrais tout d'abord faire un éloge au rapport de Madame Abramakian. C'était vraiment un rapport qui a parlé de plusieurs sujets. Mais je voudrais surtout souligner un sujet qui a été parlé aussi hier par le secrétaire général et qui d'ailleurs notre collègue belge a déjà parlé aussi. C'est la question de la cybersécurité. Je pense que la cybersécurité est un défi majeur de nos temps. La cybersécurité sera probablement une des questions les plus importantes, soit au sein des pays de notre organisation, soit au niveau mondial, dans les prochaines années, soit en ce qui concerne le maintien des droits humains, soit en ce qui concerne les questions de la justice, soit aussi en ce qui concerne les questions économiques. Donc, je voudrais souligner qu'il faut vraiment parler de ces sujets et je voudrais vraiment que dans les prochains rapports, les questions de la cybersécurité soient de plus en plus soulignées. Merci.
Thank you very much. We have now two more speakers on the list. It is Mrs. Lindestam from Sweden and Mr. Onen from Turkey. And I will now close the list. Is that okay? One more. Can you please bring your name? Yeah. Then we have one more, and then we close the list. Two more. Okay, I close the list while Mrs. Lindestam is speaking. So if you want to participate in the debate, you have to come up here on the floor and give your name while Mrs. Lindestam is giving her speech. Mrs. Lindestam.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for a good report. It was very interesting to read it, and I will also will point out the amendment of number 16 as Mrs. Walburga Habsburg Douglas has been written, and all the names are under it. It will appoint a special representative of Central Asia, and I think after listening to this debate, I think it's very necessary to have a special appointed in those areas, because as a parliamentarian, it's very hard to continue to know what's happening over there. And if we have a special representative, we can easily read and talk to anyone who is doing that. So I will push forward this amendment. Thank you.
So, okay, now in addition to Mr. Onen from Turkey, I have Mr. Del Vecchio from Italy and Mr. Murphy from Ireland. And then I'll close the list.
Yeah, and Kazakhstan.
And one from Kazakhstan. Yeah, bring the names, so we will add one from Kazakhstan also. And then the list is closed. Okay, Mr. Onen, Turkey. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. With the reference to some remarks that was made during this meeting, I would like to point out that Turkey respects the institutional structures of the European Union. On the other hand, Turkey's relations with the EU presidency is frozen when the Greek Cypriot assumed the presidency, because we don't recognize the Greek Cypriot administration. Also, I would like to add that the current situation results from the political miscalculation and mistake made in 2004 enlargement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next on our list is Mr. Del Vecchio from Italy. The floor is yours.
Grazie di cuore, signora Presidente. Vorrei esordire questo mio breve intervento esprimendo veramente un forte compiacimento alla relatrice di questo rapporto, alla signora Abramikin. È un rapporto completo, è un rapporto che mette luce e sottolinea gli aspetti più delicati che ancora sussistono, e anzi lo fa in maniera critica, nel senso che fa comprendere a tutti quanti noi come sia assolutamente necessario che la nostra organizzazione, che vive proprio e deve operare per la risoluzione delle crisi, sia chiamata ad intervenire quanto più incisivamente possibile in queste crisi. Quindi la ringrazio per questo suo rapporto. Devo sottolineare che proprio per questa sua grande ampiezza, questo rapporto ha prodotto un numero consistente di emendamenti su cui l'Assemblea sarà chiamata ad intervenire. E quindi ecco, io pregherei la relatrice appunto di svolgere una presentazione di questi emendamenti in maniera che l'Assemblea possa effettivamente votarli, avendo sempre lo scopo di ottenere da essi la migliore soluzione e la migliore coesione sulla risoluzione delle problematiche che abbiamo all'esame. Grazie comunque per questo suo lavoro.
Complimenti.
Thank you very much. Then we have Mr. Murphy from Ireland. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I too would like to congratulate the rapporteur on an excellent report, but just to support my colleague from Portugal, I do think cybersecurity and internet freedom are an incredibly important aspect of our work and will become only more important in the years to come, both to security, economy issues, internet freedom, human rights, the whole spectrum actually of what we consider here in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. So I would like to see it more central to our future work and also to our future reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have Mr. Sultanov from Kazakhstan.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Уважаемые друзья, доклад нашей сегодня докладчицы, уважаемой Вилли Аликнайте Абрамикене, ценен своей комплексностью обозначения всех проблем, актуальных проблем. Она сегодня смогла сконцентрировать и вообще наиболее новые вызовы. И само название доклада «ОБСЕ. Изменяющийся регион», он является не просто актуальным, он веет новизной, новыми взглядами к нашим проблемам, проблемам взаимоотношений, проблемам сохранения мира, обеспечения стабильности в наших странах и недопущения тех прошлых конфликтов, о которых мы сейчас привыкли и устойчиво говорим, что замороженные конфликты, не допускать проявления новых конфликтов. Я хочу поддержать Вилию и поздравить с ее блестящей работой. Она очень последовательно и длительное время набирала материалы, изучала, проделывала анализ еще со времен Астанинской декларации, которые произошли у нас во время многих встреч, переговоров. И сегодня вся эта работа вылилась в такую очень конкретную, комплексную, интересную работу. Поэтому я поддерживаю этот доклад, его положение и выводы. Считаю, что этот доклад и его резолюция будет полезным для нашей очень интересной перспективы. Спасибо, желаю успехов.
Thank you very much. Then we have the last one on our speakers list. That is Mr. Tsereteli from Georgia. The floor is yours.
It's going to be Kandelaki. Thank you, and I want to thank Madam Abramkene, Aleknaite Abramkene, for this very important and comprehensive report. And I want to point out one particular component of it, which in our view requires, let's say, one footnote when we speak about the necessity of dialogue between Tbilisi, Sukhumi, and Tkhinvali. Of course, any such calls can only be welcomed. And indeed, we are in Geneva discussions where, in their private capacity, the representatives of proxy regimes that are currently at these occupied territories do take part. But in this equation, it's very important to remember that this dialogue can never work without the participation of the main party there, which is Russia, because it is Russia that is the occupier of these territories, as it is recognized in numerous international documents. And in the end, this is a conflict between Georgia and Russia. So we thought that this extremely important element in this equation had to be pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker was Mr. Kandelaki from Georgia. It was the wrong name, but it was the right country. Thank you. So this finished our speakers list in the general debate. We will now move to consider the amendments.
You want to give the floor to
Yeah.
Julia to just respond.
Yes, we might do. We will now give the floor to Vilja Abramikiene, if she wants to. Vilja, do you want?
Thank you, Susan. I simply wanted to respond to some remarks. Thank you, colleagues, for your remarks, your suggestions. I completely agree that cybersecurity is another new challenge which is growing in scope. We've been discussing about this problem in Vienna in February. And of course, we should work on it on all levels of OSCE. And this is what I want to say, that the working group within the OSCE governmental side has been established. As I understand, under leadership of Mr. Zanier, they are working hardly. And I suppose that in the future, after some work has been done, we will be able to say and do more in this area. Regarding protracted conflicts, yes, I come from Baltics, and of course, people's lives, relations between nations, attitude of nations to each other. These are issues which I am very sensitive to. Maybe it's why I underline so much these direct threats to human lives and to our states and democracies. And I want to agree with Mr. De Donea and to thank him for his 4 points. Let's hope that arms control, one of the key elements of the OSCE, will be moved forward after elections in some countries and after negotiations within OSCE. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much. Now we will move forward to consider the amendments submitted to the draft resolution. 25 amendments have been tabled and copies of the amendments have been made available. And the correct version is entitled AS12 DRS1 Amend. And I also would like to remind you that we are supposed to be finished at 11 o'clock, but that is entirely up to you. But in light of number of amendments, I shall have to impose strict limits on speaking time. I shall therefore allow the proposer of the amendment or amendments to speak for maximum of 1 minute. And I shall then allow the same time to an opponent of the amendment, and I shall then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Mrs. Abramikiene, for her opinion. And following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. Is that clear? 1 minute, okay? Then we go to the first amendment, and I call Mr. Kovalev of Russia to propose amendment number 1. Mr. Kovalev?
Спасибо. Уважаемые коллеги, в своей поправке мы хотели подчеркнуть единство ОБСЕ прежде всего и его неделимость, отсутствие разделительных линий, конфликтов, сфер влияния и зон с разными уровнями безопасности. На наш взгляд, это принципиально важно и улучшает структуру документа, подчеркивая принципиальные для ОБСЕ принципы, которыми мы в своей работе руководствуемся. Я просил бы вас поддержать эту поправку. Спасибо.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 1? No one? Then we give... what is Mrs. Abramakiene's opinion of the amendment?
Thank you, Susan. You can say Willy simply, because we are colleagues. Mr. Kovalov, thank you for your amendment. Anyway, I have studied it properly and must say that I don't feel your language reflects the Astana Declaration wording. It's a very important and sensitive area, and wording which has been approved and agreed should be preserved. And it is the main reason why I suggest not to adopt this amendment. But of course, colleagues will decide by vote.
Thank you, Vilja. And we will now have our first vote. And I remind you to use your voting cards. Only the red voting cards will be allowed. Okay? So I shall now put amendment number 1 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 1 please raise their voting cards? Will all those against please raise their voting cards? It's an overwhelming majority. Are there any abstentions? Yes. Amendment number 1 is defeated. Then we move on to amendment number 2. I call Mr. Onan of Turkey to propose amendment number 2.
Mr. Kulkuloğlu from Turkey. Thank you, Ms. Chair. The Vienna document not only needs a meaningful update, but also better implementation in its zone of application. A poor implementation will negatively affect the process of modernization. Therefore, it is both relevant and important to underline in the text the need of improvement in implementation. A substantive modernization of the Vienna document can be done through various amendments. Indeed, some participating states have already tabled some proposals in Vienna, and these proposals are being discussed at the FSC. However, the current wording is selective in referring these proposals. Our suggestion offers a more comprehensive reference in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 2? No one? What is Vilja's opinion of the amendment?
I want only to thank to our colleague, and I completely agree with it.
Thank you. Then I shall now put amendment number 2 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 2 please raise the voting cards? Will all those against please raise the voting cards?
Is Italy voting against?
Are you voting against? Italy?
Italy voting against?
Is Italy voting against?
No.
No?
No? Nobody.
No. Are there any abstentions? No. Okay.
One abstention.
One abstention. Okay. Amendment number 2 is adopted. So we go on to amendment number 3. I call Mr. Gominsky of Belarus to propose amendment number 3.
Вместо Гуминского Леоненко выступает. Белорусская поправка сводится к следующему. Мы предлагаем изложить пункт 10 резолюции в следующей редакции. Призывает дать новый старт переговорам по укреплению и модернизации режима контроля над обычными вооружениями в Европе и настоятельно рекомендует всем странам-участницам выполнять свои обязательства и обязанности в области контроля над вооружениями и мер укрепления доверия и безопасности. Чем обоснована такая поправка? Сегодня речь идет о модернизации и укреплении режима контроля над обычными вооружениями в Европе в целом, а не сугубо о переговорах по ДОВСе. На зимнем заседании в Вене в феврале этого года это неоднократно отмечалось в выступлениях. Одним из ключевых элементов, мы считаем, концепции неделимой безопасности государств-участников ОБСЕ является создание системы взаимосвязанных юридических и политических обязательств в области контроля над вооружениями и мер укрепления доверия и безопасности.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 3? No. So what is Vilja's opinion of the amendment?
My original text in paragraph 10 refers to CFE treaty. And your amendment, colleagues from Belarus, is taking out this reference to the CFE treaty. Even during our discussion, we've got some accents, some wish to move forward the negotiations on CFE treaty. So I would suggest not to adopt this.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 3 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 3 please raise their voting cards?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
11.
11. Will all those against please raise their voting cards? It's defeated. Are there any abstentions? There are some abstentions. Yes, thank you. Amendment number 3 is defeated. Then we come to amendment number 4, and I call Mr. Onan of Turkey to propose amendment 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The argument the host nation consent is one of the basic principles of the CFE regime. However, the membership composition of the CFE treaty is different than that of the OSCE. Thus, the CFE zone of application is different than the OSCE geography. Our suggestion aims at at a factual correction by putting the principle of host nation consent into the right context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 4? No? What is Vilja's opinion?
Thank you again, Mr. Ronen. It's exactly what I tried to say in my speech, but I think you've been much more successful in expressing my wishes. Thank you. Let's adopt it.
Okay, so now we will put amendment number 4 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 4 please raise their voting cards? Will all those against raise their voting cards?
Abstentions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Are there any abstentions? No. Amendment number 4 is adopted. So, now we come to amendment number 5 and 6. Amendment number 5 and 6 are both to paragraph 12. They are not mutually excluding, and so we will take them in order. I call Mrs. Murdova of Azerbaijan to propose amendment number 5.
Muradova. Мы считаем целесообразно в пункте 12 заменить выражение «призывает все стороны, участвующие в неурегулированных конфликтах», на выражение «призывает государства-участники стороны неурегулированных конфликтов». Не стоит забывать о том, что важнейшей чертой конфликтов между государствами выступает легитимность, и что только легитимные власти государства и их представители обладают правом принятия решения. Такой подход подтверждается и Уставом ООН. Считаем, что наша международная организация может обратиться с призывом или рекомендацией лишь к своим членам, независимым государствам, а упоминание участвующих сторон конфликтов может стать на руку сепаратистских режимов. Поэтому предлагаем дать пункт 12 в следующей редакции. Призывает государства-участники, то есть сторону неурегулированных конфликтов, активизировать свои усилия по выработке мирных и осуществимых решений. И прошу проголосовать за это.
Thank you, Mrs. Mordova. Please bear over with my bad pronunciation.
Mr. Mikamian wants to speak against.
Yeah. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Not? Okay.
Не, поправка номер 6, вы сказали вместе, это пойдет?
No, this is amendment 5. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 5? No? Vilja, what is your opinion?
Dear colleague Muradova, anyway, I can understand your point. Anyway, I prefer the original text because this original text is more flexible. It provides more space for concrete action. And I would vote against your amendment. It excludes many possibilities to act at the bottom-up level. So, I doesn't agree.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 5 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 5 please raise their voting cards? Yeah. Will all those against raise their voting cards? Abstentions? Okay. Amendment number 5 is defeated. We now move on to amendment number 6, and I call Mr. Davitian of Armenia to propose amendment number 6.
Вместо Давтяна Арташес Гегамян. Речь идет о том, чтобы обязательно во всех документах, где говорится о конфликте, равнозначно были представлены все три принципа. А здесь упомянут лишь один принцип. Поэтому мы просим в пункт 2 включить на основе международно признанных принципов, включая принципы неприменения силы, равноправия и право народов на самоопределение. Это в полном соответствии с заключительным актом Хельсинкского соглашения и совместными заявлениями президентов Франции, России и США по неурегулированным конфликтам. Спасибо большое. В противном случае, если этот пункт не будет принят, это даст зеленую дорогу для применения силы, для нарушения равноправия. Тем более вопрос вошел в повестку дня. Спасибо.
Thank you. Does Ms. Morodova of Azerbaijan wish to speak against the amendment? The floor is yours.
Относительно этой поправки хочу отметить следующее. Мы привержены и поддерживаем все принципы заключительного Хельсинкского акта и их последовательность. Наша позиция по отношению к этим принципам закреплена подписями главы нашего государства под всеми соответствующими документами. И в октябре прошлого года в Дубровнике парламентской ассамблеи вместе с председателями Минской группы подробно обсудили и сам конфликт, и его историю. Поэтому сегодня не следует начинать все с нуля и в ненужном направлении. Мы считаем, что если должны они упоминаться в этом документе, то должны быть отражены все вместе и в должном порядке. Или не отражать их вообще, потому что их последовательность раздражает наших армянских коллег. Кроме того, принцип самоопределения возможен только в рамках территориальной целостности страны. Поэтому, если даже у меня еще компромиссный вариант, можно добавить только на основе общепризнанных принципов, международных принципов. Только можно добавить вот эти слова.
Thank you. And what is Vilja's opinion on this amendment?
What can I say? My dear brothers and sisters, I think that selective approach to agreed principles is one of the obstacles when solving the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. And I regret that this amendment, which has been presented, sounds too selective for me being able to adopt it. Sorry.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 6 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 6 please raise the voting cards? I'm from Russia. Yeah. Will all those against raise the voting cards? It's a majority. Any abstentions? Thank you. The amendment number 6 is defeated. Amendment number 7. I call Mr. Bilot of France to propose amendment 7.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Si vous le voulez bien, je défendrai en même temps les amendements 7, 8 et 9 qui me paraissent indissociables. Lors de la session d'hiver à Vienne, j'étais déjà intervenu pour rappeler la nécessité de mieux encadrer le transfert d'armes au niveau international, dont l'utilisation est sans cesse détournée à l'encontre des populations civiles. Je crois à cet égard que les événements dramatiques de ces derniers mois en Syrie ne viendront pas contredire cette idée. J'avais alors exprimé le vœu que le rapport de notre commission aborde la question du traité sur le commerce des armes, dont les négociations se sont ouvertes en début de semaine au siège des Nations Unies à New York. Il encourage les États participants à faire tout ce qui est en leur pouvoir pour que la conférence des Nations Unies débouche sur un accord solide, efficace et juridiquement contraignant, pour reprendre les termes d'une tribune publiée lundi par la France, l'Allemagne, la Grande-Bretagne et la Suède dans les journaux Libération et The Guardian. Il insiste en particulier sur les notions de transparence et de responsabilité des États qui devront être au cœur du futur dispositif. Il rappelle surtout l'impact négatif qu'a aujourd'hui le commerce non réglementé des armes dans les 3 dimensions de l'OSCE, politico-militaire, économique et humaine. Ce traité pourrait être l'aboutissement d'un travail de 15 ans. Il dispose du soutien du président américain. Aussi, j'espère que nous ne laisserons pas passer cette fenêtre de tir, si j'ose dire.
Thank you very much. Mr. Below proposed amendments 7, 8, and 9. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 7? No? William?
If you allow, Ms. Chairman, I would speak about all three together. It was a very good decision of the author because they are presented as one, in fact. I completely agree with the amendment number 7, and I think it's time to speak about it. Despite of the fact that this future legally binding agreement will not be taken, not be agreed in the OSCE, but it's very important, I agree. Regarding the amendment number 8, I don't know, maybe you will agree with me that this amendment sounds too detailed and maybe it will be not very acceptable in the operative part of the resolution. The resolution itself is quite short, and I would suggest to delete the amendment number 8. Regarding amendment number 9, I like the second half of this amendment from recalls furthermore that a non-regulated arms trade and so on. I dare to propose this second half of your amendment as oral amendment. It means that I suggest to withdraw the first part and to adopt the second part. Maybe you, Mr. Bu, could make your own remarks. Would be fine to agree on it.
Madame la Présidente, Madame le rapporteur, peut-être pour aller dans votre sens, pourrions-nous effectivement retirer l'amendement 8, mais il me semble que l'amendement 9 fait un ensemble indissociable et que la partie qui souligne, je veux dire, la grave menace pour la paix que représente un commerce non contrôlé des armes est assez importante dans cette résolution. Je souhaiterais plutôt la maintenir.
Just to make this, just 1 minute. Just to make this clear, did you now withdraw amendment number 8? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Je retire l'amendement numéro 8 à la demande de Madame le rapporteur.
Thank you. Vilja?
Yeah, so you've been flexible. I have to do the same. Let's agree on two amendments, number 7 and number 9.
Okay, we are all friends here, so let's take a vote. We vote first on amendment number 7. Will all those in favor of amendment 7 please raise their voting cards? Yes. Will all those against raise the voting cards? None against. Abstentions? None abstentions. Okay. Amendment number 7 is adopted. And amendment number 8 is withdrawn. And then we go to amendment number 1. 9. Sorry, 9. Not going back. Amendment number 1. And we put the amendment to vote. Will all those...
Number 9.
Yeah, I know.
Number 9.
Will all those in favor of amendment number 9 please raise the voting cards? Will those against raise the voting cards? Abstentions? Thank you. Then amendment number 9 is adopted. Okay, we move on to amendment number 10, and I call Mr. Gominsky of Belarus to propose amendment number 10.
Снова Леоненко. Необходимость принятия данной поправки обусловлена тем, на наш взгляд, что в условиях экономической нестабильности во многих государствах-участницах государствах-участниках ОБСЕ данная проблема очень актуальна и своевременна. Хотим обратить внимание на статью 6 Хельсинского заключительного акта «Невмешательство во внутренние дела», которая гласит, что государства-участники будут воздерживаться от любого вмешательства, прямого или косвенного, индивидуального или коллективного, во внутренние или внешние дела, входящие во внутреннюю компетенцию другого государства-участника, независимо от их взаимоотношений. Просим поддержать нас.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 10? From Serbia.
I'm against because there is an interpretation of the wording intervene. We cooperate on the common goals. And I don't see any of resolutions, acts, or anything what has been agreed upon in any of OSCE body as intervention in the sense and wording that Helsinki Act does mean and will mean in the future. So that's why I'm against, because it is important to divide the interpretation of intervene and to stick very closely to cooperate on common problems and common issues in our OSCE region.
Thank you. And what is Vilja's opinion of the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, my colleague, Ms. Komic. I completely agree with you. What should I add to that? This text goes against the United Nations Charter, as, for example, Article 25. Today, I spoke about other responsibility to protect innocent civilians. It is well known under the short name R2P. So we should be fair and not to act, not to express ourselves against international law, against what was agreed by all of us within the United Nations. I wouldn't suggest to adopt it.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 10 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 10 please raise the voting cards? Will all those against please raise the voting cards? Abstentions? One, I think. Yeah, thank you. Amendment number 10 is defeated. Okay, then we go on to amendment number 11, and I think I am calling Mrs. Leonenko from Belarus to propose amendment number 11.
Уважаемые коллеги, мы считаем, что данный параграф не сбалансирован в пользу человеческого измерения. В действительности угрозу безопасности и стабильности представляют в целом и комплексе нарушения основополагающих норм и принципов ОБСЕ. Более того, в связи с тем, что анализ нарушений прав человека во всех государствах-участников ОБСЕ не проводился, неоправданно указывать лишь на некоторые государства. В этой связи уместно говорить обо всем регионе ОБСЕ. Если мы проводим во всех странах, участниках ОБСЕ, исследование и анализ, вот тогда мы вправе говорить о том, что в отдельных странах соблюдаются или не соблюдаются. Вырывать из контекста общего пространства ОБСЕ данный вопрос мы считаем неправомерным. Спасибо.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 11? Germany.
I think this amendment waters down severely what is meant in this resolution. We don't name states by name in this resolution, but we all know that certain states in the OSCE really violate those human rights dimension of the OSCE. So I think we should take the stronger version as it is in paragraph 12.
Thank you. And what is Vilja's opinion of the amendment?
I completely agree with my colleague Uta Zapf, and could respond. I'd like to respond to a colleague from Belarus. It's opposite. It's you who interpret this article, this paragraph 13, in a very narrow manner. You simply pull the rug under OSCE's feet because you take out all references to human rights. This paragraph is about human rights. I don't want to adopt your amendment.
Okay, then we shall put amendment number 11 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 11 please raise their voting cards? Seven, yes, thank you. Will all those against please raise their voting cards? Abstentions? I don't think Sweden had abstentions. Thank you. Amendment number 11 is defeated. Yeah, okay. Then we go to amendment number 12. I call Mrs. Leonenko to propose amendment number 12.
Уважаемые коллеги, необходимо отметить, что любое действие государств-участников на всех стадиях конфликта должно основываться на строгом соблюдении всех обязательств, закрепленных в фундаментальных документах и решениях в рамках ОБСЕ. Это касается также военно-политического и экономико-экологического, а не только одного человеческого измерения. Полное выполнение всех взятых на себя обязательств в рамках ОБСЕ без каких-либо дополнительных требований, изъятий и оговорок является необходимым условием для предотвращения будущих конфликтов и урегулирования уже существующих. Просим поддержать нашу поправку.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 12? Yeah, Uta Zapf.
Well, again, I think it's very important to point out that the human dimension is the most conflictual within the OSCE, and this paragraph really points to this problem, so I think it should be left like it is.
Thank you. And what is Vilja's opinion of the amendment?
Yes, this paragraph is based on the Ministerial Council decision made in Vilnius. And again, the conflict cycle should include all three dimensions. Three, also the human. I suggest you colleagues to delete this amendment.
Thank you. We shall now put amendment number 12 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 12 please raise the voting cards? Okay. Will all those against please raise the voting cards? Are there any abstentions? Yeah. Amendment number 12 is defeated. Okay, we now move on to amendment number 13, and I call on Mr. Allison of Canada to propose amendment 13.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chair. I'm going to just suggest, in the absence of my colleague, that we insert a new paragraph after paragraph 16 that recalls the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, and urges participating states to continue to promote the active participation of women during all phases of the conflict cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 13? No? Vilja, what is your opinion?
Thank you for this amendment. I think it completes the resolution, and let's agree on it.
Okay, then we take a vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 13 please raise their voting cards? Will all those against raise the voting cards? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay. Amendment number 13 is adopted. Then I call Mrs. Moradova of Azerbaijan to propose amendment number 14.
Спасибо. Мы считаем, что создание мер доверия между государствами-участниками, сторонами конфликта, включая инструменты экономико-экологического измерения, должно проводиться с учетом принятия во внимание реальности. Объективные условия являются основой для какого-либо сотрудничества между государствами-участниками конфликта. В условиях, когда в зонах конфликтов присутствует фактор военной агрессии, налаживание сотрудничества прежде всего послужит сохранению статуса-кво, что нежелательно с точки зрения европейской безопасности. Считаем, что именно скорейшее разрешение существующих в зоне ОБСЕ конфликтов на основе международно признанных принципов является фактором, способствующим дальнейшему развитию и сотрудничеству в соответствующих регионах ОБСЕ. В этой связи предлагаем пункт 18 дать в следующей редакции. Все государства-участники настоятельно призывают все государства-участники наращивать усилия, направленные на, по возможности, скорейшее разрешение неурегулированных конфликтов на территории соответствующих государств-участников ОБСЕ, что будет создавать объективные предпосылки для укрепления сотрудничества и упрочения атмосферы взаимного доверия. Спасибо за внимание и прошу проголосовать за нашу поправку.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 14?
Viola from Kramen.
Germany.
I don't want to speak against, I just want to stress that point. I think that is very, very important. It's just interesting that it comes from the Azerbaijani side, because what, is it allowed to make a comment on that? No.
No, just
No.
against
Okay.
or for.
Thank you.
You should say this in a general debate. Thank you. So what is will?
Armenia wants to speak against.
Anyone wish to speak against? Armenia.
Принятие этой поправки выхолащивает всю суть переговорных процессов по неурегулированным конфликтам, так как сами переговорные процессы происходят с целью выяснения как территориальной принадлежности того или иного образования, так и соответствия этой принадлежности нормам международного права, в частности, таким основополагающим принципом, каким является право народов на самоопределение. Мы предлагаем изъять эту поправку и проголосовать против. Спасибо.
Thank you. What is William's opinion of the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my opinion, this amendment deletes very important reference to CBMs and denies the bottom-up approach which I was talking in previous, according to previous amendments. I think without confidence, no principle, even agreed principle, can be fully implemented. And I would suggest reject this amendment. But as an oral amendment, if you will agree, everybody, I could suggest to add at the end, after the words within the OSCE, at the end, such a sentence: and intensify their efforts towards early peaceful settlement of the protracted conflict. But as you know, for being able to adopt oral amendment, we need the consensus. It's very, I'm trying to get consensus between all of us in such a very complicated situation. I can repeat: and intensify their efforts towards early peaceful settlement of the protracted conflict. At the end of the paragraph 14. Oh, I'm sorry, 18.
At the end of paragraph 18.
I've made a mistake myself. Yes, it's paragraph 18. After the words "and strengthen cooperation between parties in conflict areas," of course. I looked at the number of amendments. Yes, it's a rephrasing of paragraph number 18. So, should I repeat one more?
That's Susanne. Why don't you as chair?
Thank you very much. Now we have an oral amendment, and the practice of the first committee is to accept oral amendments only if there is unanimity in the committee. The amendment can only be considered if there is no objection, and the amendment will only be carried if there is no objection. If any objection are taken, the oral amendment will fall. So this is how we will do it. I will once again read the oral amendment, and the oral amendment is at the end of paragraph 18, and intensify the efforts towards early peaceful settlement of the protracted conflicts. Are there any objections to considering the oral amendment?
Brothers and sisters from Armenia and Azerbaijan, do you agree?
Мы согласны. Я думаю, армянские коллеги
как
тоже будут
Армения?
согласны.
Вы тоже согласны?
Мы согласны с устной поправкой госпожи Вилли Абрамикены.
Ну
И
и слава
согласны с
Богу.
предложением изъять поправку азербайджанской стороны в пункте 14. Спасибо.
И можем мы сказать, что мы пришли к компромиссу, все трое.
Я думаю, все 56 пришли к компромиссу.
Слава Богу. Спасибо.
Спасибо вам.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much.
So, are we going to...
So, there are no objections to the oral amendment. Now we take a vote over the oral amendment. If the oral amendment is adopted, then we shall not vote over the amendment number 14. If the oral amendment is defeated, then we shall vote over amendment number, is it 14? Yeah, 14. Okay. Then we take a vote over the oral amendment. Do I need to read it again? No, I don't think so. Okay. All those in favor of the oral amendment, please raise the voting cards. Okay? Anyone against, please raise the voting cards. Then the oral amendment is adopted, and amendment number 14 will not come to voting. Thank you.
Don't do it again.
Okay, then we go on to amendment 15. I call Mr. Sanchez Amor of Spain to propose amendment 15.
Gracias, Presidenta. En un buen clima a partir de este momento, espero. Quiero agradecer a los colegas de 8 países que han apoyado esta enmienda. Los espacios de conflicto y de posconflicto muchas veces se desarrollan en las cancillerías, en las organizaciones internacionales, pero los lugares físicos, los escenarios donde la gente sufre esos conflictos son generalmente las fronteras. Esta enmienda está dirigida, está unida a un punto suplementario que discutiremos en una sesión posterior también sobre la importancia de las políticas de cooperación transfronteriza como un instrumento asociado a las medidas de creación de confianza. En la redacción original del documento se hablaba de medidas de economía y ambientales. Yo creo que utilizar un instrumento más omnicomprensivo, políticas de cooperación transfronteriza, creo que será un elemento esencial para la creación de esas medidas de confianza. Por tanto, se trataría solamente en la forma en que la relatora lo considere adecuado, puesto que ahora el texto ha cambiado tras la última enmienda, que hubiera una referencia a las políticas de cooperación transfronteriza como elemento horizontal de trabajo en las escenas de conflicto y posconflicto.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 15? No? Amelia, what is your opinion?
I'm in a very difficult situation now. After adopting of our oral amendment, what has been added by Mr. Sanchez will not sound properly. I simply would like to ask you withdraw your proposal. We've had a miracle before when all we agreed on very important thing. But I cannot agree with this at the end of paragraph 18. For literature reasons, for, I don't know, literature reasons, it will not sound properly.
Sí, gracias, Presidenta. Entiendo perfectamente que al haber cambiado el párrafo 18 le pido un compromiso a la ponente, puesto que estamos alcanzando un buen clima de trabajo, que esta referencia a las políticas de cooperación transfronteriza como elementos de medidas de creación de confianza sea colocado donde ella considere en el documento, donde ella pueda considerar que esta referencia es más útil. Yo tampoco quiero dejar de contribuir al acuerdo que acabamos de tomar. Le pido solamente que ella decida en qué lugar del documento podría incluirse esta referencia a la cooperación transfronteriza en las zonas de conflicto y posconflicto.
Sorry, sir, but that's not possible. We have to go to a vote. You either have to withdraw your amendment or we have to vote over it.
La mantengo, señora Presidenta.
Okay. Amendment number 15. We shall put amendment number 15 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 15 please raise the voting cards? Okay, all those against, please raise the voting cards. It's adopted. Yeah. Any abstentions? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, amendment number 15 is adopted. Amendment 16. I call on Ms. Åsa Lindestam from Sweden to propose Amendment 16.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to propose a new paragraph after paragraph 19, as calls on the President of the OSCE PA to appoint a special representative for Central Asia, strengthening the post mandate to include political party development and reinforcing the oversight rule of parliamentarians in the region, as I told you in my last comment.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 16?
Mr. Sultanov.
Mr. Sultanov of Kazakhstan, I think.
Спасибо, уважаемый председатель. Уважаемые коллеги, я считаю, конечно, вот это предложение весьма рациональным, но мы сейчас уже начинаем входить в открытые двери, тогда, когда в Казахстане уже давным-давно работает представительство ОБСЕ, и мы с ним активно сотрудничаем. Все эти вопросы мы в повседневном сотрудничестве с ними реализуем. Какая необходимость сейчас дополнительно дописывать? Это будет какое-то новое представительство или что? Какая-то новая структура, новая миссия? Поэтому, мне кажется, здесь 19-й пункт, он изложен весьма компактно, конкретно и корректно. Надобности еще масло мазать на масло, по-моему, нет. Спасибо.
Thank you. What is Vilja's opinion?
I think my dear colleague misunderstood what was proposed by Ms. Habsburg. After Kimmo Kiljunen has left the Assembly, there is some gap in our reach out as organization, and I accept this amendment. We need somebody to appoint instead of Kimmo Kiljunen, who was very active. It was always very interesting to listen to his reports. And I suggest to appoint somebody from our colleagues. I agree.
Thank you. We shall put amendment number 16 to the vote. Will all those in favor of amendment 16 please raise their voting cards? Will all those against raise their voting cards? Abstentions? Thank you. Amendment 16 is adopted. Amendment 17, I call Mr. Kovalev of Russia to propose Amendment 17.
Уважаемые коллеги, поправкой 17 мы предлагаем удалить слова «призывает ОБСЕ осуществить необходимые внутренние реформы» на слова «подчеркивает важность трансформации ОБСЕ в полноценную международную организацию путем принятия ее устава и укрепления нормативной базы функционирования исполнительных структур». На наш взгляд, эта формулировка более конкретно описывает то, что нам предстоит сделать, и вместо расплывчатой формулировки, за которой трудно сказать, что стоит, необходимые внутренние реформы, мы предлагаем более конкретную. Просил бы вас поддержать эту поправку.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 17? Uta, from Germany.
I think this amendment is wishful thinking because right now it's much too early to think about an international organization with fully fledged structures because we are still struggling with the reforms we have to make without being a fully fledged international organization. And especially if you look at the next amendment, number 18, who has been carried by some of the same persons, they want to delete the recommendation for the modification of the consensus rule. I think it would be rather an immobile organization if we haven't first made our internal reforms.
Thank you. What is William's opinion?
Yes, it's a very serious amendment. Anyway, I want to remind you about yesterday's speech of our chair in office. He expressed his wish, his optimism regarding ongoing negotiations. He told us that the Irish chairmanship proposed a new text for the states, and until 20th of July, feedback has to be presented. So I think by adopting this amendment, we would narrow the scope of the discussions. Discussions are on the ways. It's really too early because we don't know what outcome we could get from these discussions. And maybe you can leave it for another meeting, but not for now.
Thank you. Thank you. We shall put Amendment 17 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 17 please raise their voting cards?
It's 18, I think. No, it's 17.
Okay, those against?
No, but just because you have,
Abstentions? 4, 5, 6 abstentions. Okay, Amendment 17 is defeated.
No, it's not.
Okay, now we go to Amendment number 18 and 19. Amendments number 18 and 19 are the same. They both delete subparagraph 21II, so we will only vote on Amendment 18. Amendment 20 amends the same subparagraph. As is our usual practice, I will ask for Amendment 20 to be proposed before we vote on Amendment 18, so that the committee can consider the alternative wording. So if Amendment 18 is agreed to, Amendment 20 will fall. Do you all understand this? Yeah, I hope so. Okay. Then I call Mrs. Moradova of Azerbaijan to propose Amendment 18.
Мы предлагаем взять вторую часть в пункте 21, потому что государства-члены ОБСЕ по какому-либо вопросу приходят к соглашению на основе одного из главных принципов организации – консенсуса. В некоторых случаях, когда, например, имеет место конфликт между государствами и членами, существует процедура консенсус-1, при помощи которой возможно принятие решения в отношении государств, нарушающих принципы Хельсинского заключительного акта. Однако в других вопросах принцип консенсуса должен быть сохранен с целью развития духа сотрудничества в рамках организации, формирования единого подхода к вопросу безопасности и укрепления чувства ответственности по принятым решениям. Поэтому мы просим проголосовать за нашу поправку. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you. Mrs. Leonenko from Belarus tabled the same amendment. Does Mrs. Leonenko have something to add?
Уважаемые коллеги, я добавлю то, что, в общем-то, считаю с точки зрения белорусской стороны необходимым заявить. Вопрос об изменении правила консенсуса не имеет абсолютной поддержки в рамках ОБСЕ. Он может привести к дальнейшему дисбалансу в деятельности организации, подрыву основ ее функционирования, в том числе выработанных механизмов принятия решений. Поэтому я присоединяюсь к моей коллеге из Азербайджана и прошу принять наше предложение.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 18? Uta from Germany.
We have had very rare cases of consensus minor one, and I think we had them in very necessary circumstances. I prefer the formulation which is taken in paragraph 21(2), because it says at least with regard to decisions related to personal budget and administration issues, because we all remember that the OSCE has sometimes been struck because there was no agreement on the budget. So I think this would be a very wise recommendation which we could make.
Point of order from Russia.
Point of order from Russia?
Да, я выступаю один мужчина из всех женщин, которые выступили по этой поправке, и я полностью поддерживаю позицию Азербайджана, позицию Беларуси с тем, что принцип консенсуса тоже мы сохраним.
Excuse me, we are now having comments against the amendment. Thank you. Okay?
Я не успел выступить за. Мне женщине не предоставили такую возможность, к сожалению. Я как джентльмен вступил.
That's the gender issue today, of course. I now call someone from Germany to propose Amendment 20.
And if not, it falls. No. And if nobody moves it,
Ja, okay.
Frau Vorsitzende, ich glaube, dass die Uta Zapf schon zu Recht darauf hingewiesen hat, wenn wir hier im Paragraphen 21 Doppel-I dann rausstreichen das Wort zumindest, dann haben wir das Konsensprinzip beibehalten bis auf die Sachen Personal, Haushalt und Verwaltung, wo es vernünftig ist, dann anders abstimmen zu können. Ansonsten behalten wir ja die Konsensregelung bei. Ich glaube, das ist doch ein vernünftiger Kompromiss.
Thank you. What is Vilja's opinion on the two amendments?
I absolutely agree. The amendment of Mr. Wellman is extremely short but necessary to adopt. And let's go to the compromise. Among all these three proposals, exactly I propose to adopt the amendment by Mr. Wellman and yes, to withdraw words at least, and we will be having the compromise. I suggest to not adopting two amendments by Ms. Muradova and Mr. Gumiński.
Okay, then I shall put Amendment 18 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 18 please raise the voting cards? All those against? Yeah. Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. Amendment number 18 is defeated. Amendment number 19 is the same as Amendment 18, which we just have dealt with. And then we shall put Amendment number 20 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 20 please raise their voting cards? Will all those against raise their voting cards? Abstentions? Okay, Amendment 20 is adopted. And we are 10 minutes past 11, and we are not finished with all the amendments, but we shall take a break. We shall cut this meeting now, and we shall continue handling the amendments on our meeting tomorrow at 9:30. Tomorrow at 9:30. We will continue, and then we will start with Amendment 21. Thank you very much, all of you, for your very good cooperation.